Thanks everyone who's joined. I'm Rachel. I'm an Agile Success Manager here at Plandek, and I'm here with Colin, who is a senior software engineer and a team lead. I've asked him to join us today because he's been doing some interesting processes in the Scrum and also the Agile metrics on Plandek, and I figured it'd be interesting to see what he has to share. So Colin, can you give us a bit of an introduction about yourself and then generally about the team?
Yep, no problems. Hello, everyone that's joined. As Rachel says, my name's Colin. I'm a software engineer here at Plandek. I have been working at Plandek for about 6 years. As well as a software engineer, I'm a team lead. We have a team over here called the Streamweavers. Shout out to the Streamweavers if you're there. The kind of work that we do is it's a term called stream-aligned work. Some of you might know what that means. I mean, essentially, we're responsible for working with our product team to understand the needs of the users, and then it's our team's responsibility to reduce the risk in those items of work, split the tickets up, and then we run sprints where our definition of done on this team is to make sure we've actually deployed the item to production. We have a fairly regular sized team. We've got 4 developers, we've got a single QA, and we have a product owner on the team as well.
And is there a Scrum Master on that team?
We share the Scrum Master responsibilities, actually. Our QA engineer does the majority of it. So she does the daily stand-ups and the retros, but we tend to share that side of it out.
Thanks, Colin. One thing I forgot to add at the start, actually, is we do have a question box if you do have questions coming through. If possible, I'll try to include them as we go along. Otherwise, we'll pick them up at the end as much as possible. So thanks, guys. So Colin, you mentioned you've been doing Scrum on your team about 2 years. Does that mean you're a very mature team, that you're here because you're experts at it, or?
Oh yeah, no, yes, it has been a long time. It has been 2 years. We're on sprint 41. Just started today. I would not say that we are the most agile team out there, no. But I would say that we are definitely showing signs of maturity. So the cool thing is, although some metrics might not be going our way all the time, as we'll see when we look at some of the data, we can demonstrate that this team is making a journey of continuous improvement. So yeah, almost is probably the answer to that.
Great. And it has been a long journey, as you said. So I'm just kind of wondering what's helped you on that journey of being more agile and improving your processes.
Yeah, I think there's been, first and foremost, we've had a lot of space, I think, from the organisation. So our managers have all given us a lot of autonomy to start this journey and take each step of this journey in the way that we want to. So we felt trusted. With the team itself, we have made sure that we've collaborated a lot more. That's definitely increased. We've worked really, really hard to understand exactly what it is we're actually trying to deliver during a sprint. And it's been really, really helpful to really get into the details of what's going on. We've all shared on our team a big sense of responsibility in terms of our team being one of the teams that takes what the product wants to give to the users and we actually deploy it to the users. So it's really helped that we've owned that journey, I think, from a team level. And then we've been able to see the improvements, of course, in Plandek. First of all, we started looking at the definition that we created of success. Plandek was a really great way of showing outside the team that we were on the right path. So the metrics have certainly helped that as we'll see.
Okay. And one thing I'm kind of curious about is, why did you start using Plandek as part of that journey? Was that something that your managers suggested, or how did it come about?
I think our managers probably would suggest that we should use this thing. It's an interesting one because obviously we are trying to get better at delivering the platform that is trying to help people get better at delivering. So there is definitely a sense of trying to eat our own dog food. We're all really eager to see how this works. And as I say, we've had 2 years of experience as using it as an actual team, which has been great. And as I said just before, we came up with what means success for our team. And once we defined that, we wanted to be able to demonstrate that we are being successful so that we can start talking about how to improve on the team, what should be changed. But we had somewhere where we could show that we were hitting the results that we wanted to see and going in the right direction.
Okay. And you know, one of the things that we see sometimes is starting that journey can be a little bit varied for people, and I'm wondering how that was on your team.
Yeah, I think that resonated true with our journey as well. It started quite slowly, I think, in the adoption front. We just had a single metric on a single dashboard. The metric was sprint completion. That's the percentage of story points that you complete in that sprint compared to what you put into it. And the board that we used was a retrospective dashboard. So just at the end of every sprint, we looked at it, looked over the flow of tickets going through it, and whether we were happy with the overarching completion number. And then from there, it kind of graduated. We wanted to affect that number. So once we had one, we wanted to change it. And our instinct was to start looking at how we were planning sprints. So we got into that, and then we wanted to add context around the number as well. So we did want to get 100% sprint completion. That later changed to a more tangible number, but we did want to get certain results. But we wanted to make sure the team were happy whilst we were chasing those results, that the quality was good, the value was good, the amount of work that we're outputting was good. So it basically started to expand in terms of what we were tracking. We started using Plandek to help us plan the sprints better. And it just basically went from there to the point now where we're using it on a daily basis, and we're getting more and more confident in our ability to actually affect change. So we're seeing a lot of success from things we're trying, and that's helped out with the journey.
Okay. And I am going to ask to see the metrics pretty soon, but one of the things that I also wanted to know was, there's been a lot of changes, as you say, both in terms of the approach to Agile that you're using, and also, you know, using the metrics. Has there been resistance across the team as you've been rolling out these changes as a team?
Yeah, it's not been natural. We've all got different habits, and we find things easier. We find certain things easier than others. So I think we're probably more inclined to stick with what we know, you know, as part of, you know, trying to satisfy the metrics that we targeted. We kind of had comments probably like, are we just sort of trying to chase numbers for numbers' sake? Like, you know, can we not just gamify this, for example? Or like, you know, there's a lot of metrics, you know, how can this help our focus? But we got through those kinds of areas of resistance. Even if we did gamify some metrics, as we're probably seeing a bit later, they led to useful outcomes. There might be a lot of like metrics that you can look at, and maybe I look at a lot of metrics just to explore, but really you just focus on a couple or a couple of behaviors, and that drives changes throughout. So yeah, but there was resistance, but we managed to get by. I think fundamentally we were all subscribed to a core belief that we wanted to be a reliable team, and then we mapped reliability to the sprint completion percent. So when we saw that increasing, we were happy.
You mentioned something there, gamifying metrics. Can you explain just what you mean by that term?
Yeah, so a scenario that comes to mind that helps explain, it's a recent one. So we got some OKRs recently, and one OKR for the team was to produce 50 tickets a month, and we were currently producing like 20. And so essentially the OKR was to increase your ticket throughput, you know, close more tickets per month, basically. And in terms of gamifying that, you could do that by just making tons and tons of like one story point tickets, or like tons of really, really, really small tickets. So that was an example of us gamifying it. But it wasn't a bad thing. We were it was embraced, like it was sort of shown that, you know, you should try that. We did try it, and then we found that we had fantastic knock-on effects. So not only did our core metric reliability go up by producing smaller tickets, we found that they encapsulated less risk, and our return rate went down, our rework went down. So there's just one example really of doing that.
Okay, I might ask you to show a little bit more about that later. You know, when we dig into the metrics, but yeah. Cool. So obviously on this journey you've been getting results. Has everything been as you expected?
No.
Okay. Okay, elaborate on that then.
Yeah. definitely not been as expected. So like again, like we are seeing good results. Like we know that the team's maturing and things are definitely trending in the right way, which is really, really encouraging, because sometimes you're too focused or zoomed in to really see like the big picture. But yeah, like we definitely have tons of examples where we'll go and plan a sprint and we'll think it's the best sprint we've ever planned, and then it's the worst sprint we've ever completed. So we've had times of being successful, not successful. We've had ups and downs, which we don't generally want. But now we're trending towards a bit more predictability, which is great, but still lots to learn.
Okay. So this is where I'm going to ask you, can we please see the dashboards? To start off, I'd really like to see what sort of stuff you're looking at, on a regular basis, and why you're looking at them.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Are you seeing the screen all right there, Rachel?
Yeah, I can see it.
Nice.
Thanks, Colin.
Cool. So I'll go through some of the dashboards then as a little bit of an intro. So we will dig into some of this stuff. I mean, there is a lot on them, but essentially what we do with these dashboards is quite simple. So the delivery one, it's just to see how we're performing across sprints. So I mentioned before that we're really into reliability. It's just what % of the work you said you were going to do, did you do? We want to be the kind of team that does at least 80%. That's the target we've currently set ourselves. And so we use this to see how we're trending across sprints, whereas a lot of the other stuff is about what sprint you're about to do or what one you're in or the one you've just completed. So that's delivery. We'll come back here, no doubt, later on. The backlog dashboard is quite easy. But this one is all about thinking of the inputs into the team. So we touched on like rework and smaller tickets earlier. Like we've learned in our journey that smaller tickets work better for us. So we want to make sure that we've got smaller tickets on our backlog. So we split this here by story points. This is just unresolved tickets for our team. We got 8 5-story point tickets and 10 threes. We want to see more smaller tickets, so we know we're going to have favorable conditions to complete a sprint. Planning dashboard, next one. It makes a big impact for us. How we plan sprints makes a big difference. And we have this dashboard to help calibrate some of our gut instincts. This little metric on the side here is the delivery time of an average ticket just in the stages of development in a sprint. We might estimate how long a 3-story point ticket might take us, and we might think it's going to take us like a day. But then over here, it will remind us that there were some tickets that drove that average up. And sometimes you can be sitting there for 4 days with what you think is a simple ticket. It goes from time in dev to QA, product review, deployment. So this has been really helpful for planning sprints. And then the last two, just quickly, are just about the sprint in flight and the sprint that we've just closed. So we started the sprint today. That's why this chart just has a dot on it. But the sorts of things that we're looking at during a sprint is, what's the flow looking like? Is there tickets sitting around waiting for the next stage? Has somebody got like too many tickets to work on their own, or is someone just waiting for work to do? So we can manage that here. And in the retro, we had a retro today. This is really where we're going to talk over some of the key metrics as a team that we've identified. How did we perform on the last sprint? We didn't do too bad on that one. We talk about how did work flow across the sprint through the various stages, and are there any bottlenecks and that kind of thing. But that's just a brief intro, I think, into what we're using it for at the moment.
Thanks, Colin. There's a lot of metrics there I can see. So we obviously don't have time to go into them all, but the sort of metrics that I think might be useful for people would be, can you show some metrics that you're looking at when you're asking questions of yourself and the team generally?
Yeah.
What are those questions?
Yeah. So I think the first question that we asked ourselves was, are we a reliable team? And the answer was no, because we was able to see across sprints whether or not we were getting our current target. So the target at the time was 100%, and we didn't hit it very often. And that was one of the questions we wanted. So then it spun up another question of, how can we be more reliable? We felt like a good way of being more reliable is just to get better at planning. And so we started to ask questions about, well, how long does the things actually take us on our team? Like, is there a difference between a 3-story point ticket and an 8-story point ticket? Like, is there actually some science to it? So one thing that we did to actually affect that, I am going to open a spreadsheet, right? But this is our sprint plan. Okay, so it is a spreadsheet. But on our team, we have 4 developers, a single QA, single product owner, and we do have to deploy everything we do to a user to get it done. When we started planning sprints in the beginning, we had an idea on how many story points we wanted to include in it. And we would just be happy if we'd ended up with the right amount of points in that sprint. We wasn't really worrying about the distribution across the sizes of tickets or who was going to do it, or, is it too much work to flow through one person at a certain point in the process. So we put this together to, first of all, find out how it might cascade down through to eventually being deployed, but then also to ask us when we're giving estimates, which is essentially what we're doing here. It might take us 2 days to QA this. We can go back into our planning dashboard, which is over here. And based on the size of that ticket, like how many story points it is, we might be able to say, oh, maybe actually you've been a bit pessimistic or optimistic with your estimate there, and maybe things will go a bit differently. So we just use this to calibrate it, and we've just found it adds a bit of buffer to our sprints and makes it a lot easier to problem solve during the sprints if anything does go wrong. Over on our delivery dashboard, actually, you can see kind of how this went, right? So I think if I show this one, we've been doing, as I said, like 2 years of sprint. So I'm just going to set quite a long date range here. Cool. So this is all of the sprints we've ever done. And this is the point where we started to do this day plan thing, sprint 14. I think when we started doing it, the team response was sort of not believing the numbers that we were seeing. It's saying you're just going to take like 4 days to do a 3 story point ticket in dev. We could actually go into those and see the tickets that were affecting it. And we learned as a team that we can adjust those metrics. We can remove outliers, we can get to a number that we're happy with. But what was just important was that it wasn't just down to our gut instinct or a single person to decide what might happen to that ticket, that we at least had a couple of angles on it. But we started doing that in sprint 14. And you can see quite a few different things in the data. So there's less red on this side, really. The targets that we're setting ourselves aren't as high, and they're slowly increasing instead of trying to just get the best numbers you can and sort of falling short. Like, we do still drop the ball, and we do still have some bad moments, but if you zoom out, like we've done here, you can see that we're trending upwards. Probably got a bit of an issue with how much we're committing to at the moment.
When you say the targets, are you referring to the sprint completion or the number of story points you're bringing in?
Yeah, so so this is the amount of story points we commit to, and then this is the amount of story points that we've done, and here we've left 12 on the table, and then our completion is the percent of story points that you completed, and we want that number. We want to complete 80% of the story points in the sprint.
Yeah. Okay, and why 80 and not 100?
So when we was doing 100, which was around here somewhere, we were finding that we were leaving too much space at the end of the sprint because we was at full capacity. It would basically be on a knife edge as to whether or not the sprint was successful. It would just be, binary, basically. Did you succeed or fail? We found that the little bit of buffer it allowed us meant we could kind of start running some of the more complicated things, maybe do some spikes, maybe make things a little bit easier such that we can start the next sprint and get into the QA stages a bit sooner and reduce some of the flow efficiency problems that we had.
Thanks, Phil.
That's all right. Yeah. Do we have time to chat about rework? Should we have a look at that next?
Yeah, that would be great.
Cool.
I think maybe start off with what you mean by rework.
Yes. So rework was a term that came to the team a few months ago alongside our OKRs, which was cool. Rework is the amount of work you're doing in service of fixing bugs or making changes to work you've already completed. So just going back for it. So with our OKR, we were asked to, as I said at the start, close 50 tickets per month. And then when we looked at how many tickets we were actually closing per month, not only was it not 50, but of the tickets we were closing, half of them were rework tickets. So it became a challenge of understanding, how many tickets are we actually producing of value, and then how do we go about increasing that? And what the team found is, in order to potentially gamify, as I said at the start of the call, that 50 ticket, we wanted to make sure we had a larger concentration of small story point tickets. So we on the backlog here, which I'm showing, as I said at the start, we like to keep a track of what's about to come into a sprint. We've got 10 free story point tickets to work on. There's 8 5 story point tickets. So potentially we were going to want to break these ones down before starting the next sprint. Potentially we've got quite a lot in our backlog, and it just helps us sort of ensure that we have the best stuff coming into the sprint to get the best outcomes. I think we can see on our delivery board some examples of the completed planned work. So here we see a nice chart. I'm going to go last 12 weeks because this is quite a recent thing for us. We set this metric up, which is just tracking completed tickets by sprint. We've got two metrics on there, three metrics on there, but the two that I want to show you is completed planned tickets and completed unplanned tickets. So again, an unplanned ticket for us is a defect we create when something's gone wrong on a ticket, or a bug that we've created, or a change because we've decided to update the ticket's definition as it's gone through a sprint. You can see our problem. We have a very high ratio of unplanned work that we're having to get through, or that we're providing for ourselves. So this is not sustainable, and it's going to make it twice as hard potentially to hit our OKR for throughput. We can see on the right-hand side of the chart, though, that we are starting to do more planned work than unplanned. Still bad ratios, but we're getting there. We've basically found that if we make smaller tickets and we finally work out how to do that, that we have a much smaller chance of bugs occurring in our code, misunderstandings of ACs, or changes request, or things going wrong in QA. So we got really interested in how to make small tickets. And that OKR, as I said, that cascaded down through the company, really encouraged us to finally nail that. We track this by looking at this metric, actually. This is the same metric I just showed you, but this time the way we filtered it is we're looking at just large tickets versus small tickets. So these are completed tickets. The large tickets are tickets of 5 and 8 story point values. The small ones are tickets of 3, 2, and 1 story point values. So again, if we're going to do right by the OKRs, we need to maintain this behavior of making small tickets on the team. And as long as we're closing more small tickets than large, we should be all right with the rest of the stuff that we worry about. And you can see how that's starting to transition now as well, which is really interesting.
By what sprint did you start making the change, Colin?
This one, to be honest, we've made various changes for our journey of like breaking down tickets, and our favorite flavor of that started only 2 sprints ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And the particular flavor of that, if anyone's interested, is to make sure that it's not just one person breaking those tickets down. So we look at a body of work in a workshop. The ticket gives opinion, the members of the team give opinions on what slices of that ticket we can see and how to break it down. But now what we're doing is we're regrouping the day later, and we're trying to make them even smaller. And then once we have those, we're all going away individually and adding the detail to those tiny tickets, and then coming back and explaining it to each other. And we find that that's a much better way to collaborate around the issue than we tried before. I did just want to quickly show you some correlation here, just in terms of how the small tickets is helping with our rework. I wanted to get a larger date range. Cool. So this is what we tend to do on our team, is like we look for correlations in our data, and then we just continue with these behaviors to see whether or not that was a real correlation or not. But with this recent journey of ours, we're seeing that rework is just starting to drop down, and small tickets is just starting to creep up. So we're hoping that as we make more small tickets, we reduce rework, which is going to help our OKR. But yeah, I don't know if we've got time to talk about flow efficiency. I've mentioned that a couple of times, but how are we doing?
I think we have maybe about 3 minutes. I do have 1 or 2 questions I want to ask.
Yeah, cool.
First.
Yeah.
So obviously this is a work in progress, and you've been making tickets smaller, and it seems, at least initially, that it's having an impact on some of your metrics there. I mean, it sounds simple, make tickets smaller. Has it been?
No, it's we've come out with all kinds of tickets at the end of that process. Like, we've come out with like swamps of small tickets that only mean something to the person that made them. We've come out with tickets that are small, but we can't deploy them until we have them all, and that basically is one large ticket in disguise. Yeah, it's been really, really hard, and it's just it's just more long calls to sit on. It's more work up front. We kind of want to get into the development side of things sometimes, and it's kind of more upfront work. But the OKRs help remind us that we can't really get away from it. It is a good idea, and so we just persevered with it, and now we quite enjoy splitting them up, actually, and we enjoy doing the work.
I have a question that's come in here that's quite relevant. From Abby, when you work to make small stories, do you focus on vertical slicing, or will you prioritize small stories even if it's very horizontal slicing?
They're so difficult. I would say we focused on horizontal slices accidentally.
Accidentally, okay.
Our manager Jeff gave us some resources on the internet about it, and then we learned that we were slicing it wrong. Now we're challenging ourselves to come up with vertical slices. It's just much harder. We're doing a redesign at the minute, so we're iterating on live view to come up with a new version. What we're trying to do there is like treat like a generic component as its own slice, and then maybe there's a collection of components within a certain card, and we're trying to iterate on it that way. We haven't become the best at making the vertical slices, but we're starting to get better at understanding when we haven't done one, and we're not seeing any more the problem of all of the tickets needing to wait for their friends so that they can all get QA'd at once. So it suggests that we're getting better at slicing it as well. But what we really need to do is we need to make our projects smaller so that we can deliver value with a smaller ticket more easily. If you're trying to chase quite a big deliverable, it becomes difficult to sort of slice that up. That's what we found. Yeah.
Thanks, Colin. I think you've about 2 minutes, maybe, if you want to do a quick run through flow. Is that enough time for you?
Yeah. Flow efficiency. This is a really interesting one for us. So we noticed this in our retros. So in our retro, we look at this chart, and it talks about how long a ticket spends in a different stage of your workflow per day. We have, for example, if you look at a waiting deployment, if we had 2 stages for waiting deployment, right? But you can see how much of the flow that's taking. And what we often find is when we see static, parts of our flow that seem to just sit there for various, for a few days on a trot, we call that obviously a bottleneck, and then we try and work out how to reduce it. So this is deployment that we're currently working on. But we did actually have a journey with our awaiting QA time. So I'll just show you quickly how that turned out, and then I can tell you about how we did it. Gotta have to look at the full range again. So one sec. Yeah. All right. Just hide everything that isn't QA. Nice. Sweet. So you kind of got a tale of 2 halves here. So in the first half of our journey, we had massive wait times in QA. It was either because there was no ticket there to QA. That could be because we've started the sprint with all of the developers trying to work on a 5 story point ticket, and it's going to take them probably 6 days to get it over. So you have a problem. Or it might be that the tickets that you're working on, there's just a lot of them in QA. Maybe you've got too many there, and so you end up leaving stuff waiting. What we did in response to that is we asked ourselves if we were happy enough with the quality that we were producing. So we looked at how many bugs our team was producing over time and decided that it wasn't a load, and that maybe we're getting quite good at attention to detail type work. So we said to ourselves that the developers in our team then can QA each other's work as long as they're just small tickets like 1s, 2s, and 3s. So we started doing that, and then we started to more appreciate how 4 developers worth of work has to just flow through one person. So again, reducing our targets and leaving ourselves some time to sort of prep some work for the next sprint helped. Opening QA up to the rest of the team helped. And you can see here, the delay between finishing a ticket and getting going on the next one is minimal. So if we can do this with deployment, we should be able to increase our throughput and reliability even more. Yeah, I think that's it. There was one little tiny chart that I did want to quickly show, actually. It's just here. This is an interesting one. If I'll get it into the extended view and then just reduce the range as the last thing.
We have about 1 minute left.
Cool.
If anyone has any other questions, this is your time to slot them into the Q&A.
Oh, okay, yeah. No worries. Well, let's leave that here, and we'll answer some questions.
You were about to show something there, I think, Colin.
Oh yeah, do you want to see that? So this was just again, we've gone through lows today, and there's if we had more time, we'd go for a lot more. But there is lows to think about. But with our team, we just have to think about planning sprints in the best way possible and producing the smallest tickets that we can. 0 story points is almost like a rework ticket, but this helps us see the kinds of tickets that we're closing. So now we're closing 2s and 3s, not many 5s as we were previously. So it's just all we have to look at is what kinds of tickets are we working on, and it kind of takes care of itself. Yeah.
Thanks, Colin.
All right.
So Emil asks, how do you calculate reliability?
Yeah,
So
nice.
I think there's two questions in that. Maybe it's a metric, but also generally.
Yeah. So like the term reliability came before metrics, and for us it was just, we're a new team, we're doing sprints. What outcomes do we want? And we could have said like we want to have we want to really high throughput, or we want to produce like the most amount of value. But for us, whatever we did, we wanted to do what it was we said we was going to do. So we wanted to make sure that we matched the expectations on the team. So the way we calculate it, it's just complete your tickets, it broken up by sprint. So how many tickets did you complete in the sprint? How many story points did you complete in the sprint versus your target? So we completed 77% of the story points in this sprint here. So that's how we calculate that. And then we just had to downgrade our version of success to 80% as opposed to 100, just to give ourselves a bit more likelihood of actually succeeding and being able to build. Yeah, hope that helps answer the question.
Thanks, Colin. I think we've just gone over. But thanks everyone that's attended. Hopefully it'll be useful for you. If you've any additional questions, you can reach out to the chat box or on Slack.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you very much for doing this call. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for joining everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers then.